All right, Brian, it is game prediction time here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. And we are now going to give our predictions for the Notre Dame Boise State game that's happening this Saturday inside of Notre Dame Stadium at 3:30 p.m. This is always a fun segment. I love talking about how we think this game is going to go out, giving final score predictions, talking game records. It's one of my favorite segments that we do throughout the week. Brian, I'll go ahead and get us kicked off here. It's talking about these game predictions. I'll give you guys my final score first. I have Notre Dame winning this game 51-17. I always hesitate to predict any team to go over 50. I think this offense is absolutely humming. And the defensive side of the ball for Boise State is the one that has really, really struggled. They give up a lot of explosive plays. And that's something that Notre Dame's offense has feasted on so far this year. On paper, like I've talked about in the previous two sections, this matchup favors Notre Dame across the board on paper. Now they have to go out and execute offensively. They have to stay focused. They have to make sure that they're honed in on the task at hand. And then defensively, you have to continue progressing. You can't do what a lot of fans are doing and just hang your hat on, hey, they held Arkansas to 13. This defense is back. Just do what you did every single week, because there were some mistakes that Arkansas did that were self-inflicted that also led to them only scoring 13 points. But right now, there's no doubt about it. This offense is really, really hot. They haven't punted in 2 games. We talk about what Notre Dame's defense is up against. This is what Boise State's defense is up against. Maddox Madsen doesn't do a good job of handling physical pressure as well as Taylon Green did. And when I mean, I don't mean as a passer. I mean, he doesn't have the escapability that Taylon Green does. Taylon Green was 6'6", 235 pounds. Maddox Madsen is 5'10", 200 pounds. So it's a different level of athlete that you're going against. We'll get more into it when I go over some of my game records, but I think the D-line should have a good game this week. And it's honestly kind of consistent with what we've seen them do, but I think this might be one of those performances where they kind of put it together against a good Boise State defensive or offensive line. And I do think that the defense continues to build on their performance from last week. Overall, I think the offense keeps rolling. So I have Notre Dame winning 51-17.
So, Trev, you think – just to make sure we're clear here, what you're basically saying is you think that this offense is basically it's going to just steamroll Boise. Tell me why. I'm not arguing. I'm just tell me why. Like, what's the matchup that you look at and say, okay, this is why I think they're going to hang 51 points on a Boise State team that, I mean, even against some of the better teams they've played in recent years. They gave up 37 to Oregon last year, 31 to Penn State last year. 34 this year. They haven't given up. I mean, you haven't seen them give up. I'm trying to go back and look when the last time Boise State gave up even 40 points in a game. I'm trying to find it. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it could certainly happen. I'm trying to get into some more of the Nevada. Here we go. I found it. Nevada 2021. It's the last time Boise State gave up over 40 points in a game. So, what is it about the matchup? What is it that you think is, or is it just that this team is just too hot right now on offense?
Yeah, that's a lot of it. I mean, I think one of the benefits of them playing Oregon as early as they did last year is they didn't find their footing. If Notre Dame was playing Boise State in week 2, I would not project them to get 51 points.
Okay.
Some of it's a little bit of a recency bias. I watched this team go hang the most amount of points a non-conference opponent in the SEC went and hung on an SEC opponent on the road in 20 seasons. That's something that just doesn't happen all the time. There is not a single matchup across the board that remotely favors Boise State, especially from a skilled position standpoint, with all due respect to the players that they have. There's not a single cornerback on their roster that covers Malachi Fields one-on-one. There's not. There's not a single linebacker that keeps up with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in space. They have quality players. But what we've talked about at the start of the season is, look, this Notre Dame team, this Notre Dame offense has the potential to be elite.
Sure.
Now, I was in the camp of I got to see it first, and now I've seen it. I have seen people not be able to hang with Eli Raridan. Ty Benefield has given up. I mean, last season, man, he's kind of picking up where he left off from a coverage standpoint. Mike Denbrock has done a really good job, like we saw from that throwback screen. He's done a really good job of using defense's aggression against them so far this season, especially the last couple of weeks. You get somebody like Ty Benefield biting hard downfield on a play-action pass, Eli Raridan's going to be running with nobody close to him up the seam.
Yep.
And compounded on top of that, I just think that Boise State's defense is the weak link on the team because one of them has to be, and it's clearly not their offense. I see this playing out very similar to the Arkansas game in that Notre Dame's offense forces Boise State to be more one-dimensional. And like we just talked about, if you put Boise State in a position where Maddox Madsen has to start pushing the ball down the field to win game, because even if it's, say, like 35-10, dink and dunk passes aren't going to get you back in the game. I think they're going to get a couple of turnovers. I have Notre Dame winning this one big.
I think for that to happen, it's going to have a lot more to say with the Notre Dame defense than it does Notre Dame offense.
Okay.
And that's why we're not too far off. I have it 41-10. I have Notre Dame winning 41-10. I have them covering. And the problem that I still see is as you mentioned, Arkansas did shoot themselves in the foot last week at times. Did Notre Dame do some better things? Of course they did. We broke it down upon further review. But did Arkansas go out last week and just get shut down by Notre Dame and just everything Notre Dame did was just, there's nothing they could get going? No, that's not really how the game went down. Notre Dame absolutely did some things to get some key stops. We broke down the play on their second series where they 2nd and 5 tried to run a throwback wheel to the running back, and Kingston was all over it. And then Adon did a great job on that play. So Notre Dame made stops. They got better. But I don't think this team quits the way that Arkansas did last week. And I think this team has got more confidence than Arkansas had last week. And I think Arkansas, I watched them play that, just going through pregame. They had a lot of false enthusiasm going into that game. And the minute Notre Dame kind of went down and scored on, they were like, okay, we're done. Just, we got no shot. And so I look at it like this, Trev, is if the Notre Dame defense can play the way it's capable of, I think your score might actually be not only close, but you might undersell it a little bit because I don't know that Boise can get to 17 if this defense plays the way they're capable of. I'm going 41-20 because I do think Boise's going to be able to run the ball a little bit early. They're going to have some gash plays. They're going to hit a couple shots, and they're going to move the ball, and that's going to limit possessions for the Notre Dame offense early on. And then I think Notre Dame kind of puts it away in the second half. Notre Dame is capable of scoring 41 points against Boise State by the end of the third quarter, if not sooner. Like, it's that big of a – I don't think people understand nationally. I think Notre Dame fans have started to get it, which is why we've seen a complete 180 from some Notre Dame fans from 2 weeks ago. To where now it's like, this guy should be in the Heisman contention. They're going to score 50 on everybody. And it's just a completely different dynamic because I think what people are watching on Saturday is like, guys, these guys are freaking dudes. And it's all over the place. I mean, you mentioned Eli Raritan. 2 weeks ago, we watched this offense score 49 offensive points, and he didn't catch a pass. You know what I mean? Like, and they didn't even try to throw him a pass. He didn't even get a target in that game. He blocked his butt off. We didn't see Jaden Greathouse do a whole lot that game. But we saw Malachi go off. We saw Faison go off. We saw the running backs go off in the run game. This past week, Eli's making plays. Malachi's making plays. Faison's making plays. Greathouse made a big play. Love and Price are making big plays. Like, who do you stop? Who do you defend? How are you going to keep this? Like, how do you keep this offense down? You go with their offensive line with a bunch of things to try to create mistakes, and you try to get the redshirt freshman quarterback to make mistakes. And then the other thing you do is don't let him get into the rhythm. What's the best way to keep Notre Dame out of rhythm? Don't let him be on the field. And that's what Boise State's going to do. They're going to try to slow the game down, limit possessions, and wear the Notre Dame defense down. I don't know that they're going to be able to do it for 60 minutes, but I'm not someone who is going to ignore the first 3 games and pretend like Arkansas is the new reality until I see it over the course of a couple games. And Boise will be a nice step in the right direction. But I need to see it. So I'm 41-20. I don't think this is a game. Like you said, I think this offense is clicking. When you've done something 3.5 games, because we saw it in the second half against Miami as well. As CJ Carr's gotten more and more comfortable, this offense has just looked, pretty ridiculous. And remember last year when you and I kept saying, guys, this receiving core is better than people think it is. They're getting open. They're just not getting the ball. Well, this is an even more talented version of that. And what I mean by that is Mike Denbrock's always been good at scheming guys open on top of having great talent. He's always been good about scheming guys open and putting defenses in binds. It's not like he schemed Arkansas to say, we're going to get Will Paulding to creep behind the defense. What I'm saying is he does things that put defenses in binds that if a quarterback is willing to spread the ball around, and here's the one area where Jaden Daniels and CJ Carr have a lot in common. Jaden Daniels ran the offense. Now, the way that Mike Denbrock designed the offense, it meant that Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas were going to get a lot of touches. But when you go back and watch that LSU offense in 2023, Jaden Daniels rarely forced the ball to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Kyron Lacey and Mason Taylor also had over 30 catches that year. You had Chris Hilton had 13 catches for 225 yards. Josh Williams had 14 catches out of the backfield that year at running back. Him and Logan Diggs combined for over 20 catches. You know, so it was, hey, we're going to spread the ball around. And CJ's very good at that. Riley would kind of lock in on certain guys. CJ is more, I'm going to kind of go with the read to a degree. And so I think this offense can move the ball on anybody as long as they can get into a rhythm and the offensive line can hold up. So I'm not worried about this game offensively. The only thing that concerns me is, as I said, can Boise State create enough mistakes from Notre Dame, missed opportunities, turnovers to make this a closer game? But the reason I'm at 41-20, again, it just comes down to I need to see it more from the defense. And this is a very good Boise State offensive line and a more explosive backfield. There's a couple runs that Arkansas missed last week that I think could have gone for bigger plays with more athletic backs, and Boise has those kind of backs. Their three backs are good football players. They're not Ashton Genty. They're not in the same universe as Ashton Genty. They're good football players. And I just need to see the defense put it together again. And until I see that more consistently, then I'm gonna be here. But I think your score is more than possible. I'm kind of turning into Trevor a little bit. Like, I'm gonna show me with the Notre Dame defense. They got to show me they can keep, another team under 20 in this particular game, because I don't know that the offense is good enough. And I think you would agree with your score, Trev, because I don't think you're predicting Notre Dame only score 9 points in the second half. I don't think the mismatch is such that Notre Dame's going to score 42 again in the first half. So if the defense is giving up 13 at halftime, then it could be closer than to like what it was against Purdue. Like, we're feeling great about this team now because of the last game and a half. There was a lot of upset people in our chat at halftime of the Purdue game. Like, how's this only a 12-point game? And so I just still need to see that. But it's like I said last week, when this team plays good football on both sides of the ball, there's not an opponent on the schedule, with all due respect to USC and NC State and Navy and Pitt and teams like that. There's not a team on the schedule, including Boise, that has any chance of being within 10 points of Notre Dame if they play their game on both sides of the ball. That's how talented this team is. I just need to see the defenses actually changed, as opposed to just a slight adjustment for a game against a team that was clearly ready to quit on their coach. They're not quitting on Spencer Danielson. And that's the difference. What say you about that, Trev?
Oh, I think that's totally fair. I mean, look, I saw Boise State scoring 17, and it's not like a garbage time touchdown at the end of the game when like the third stringers are in or anything like that. I see Notre Dame in this one, for my score prediction, to have a really big third quarter. Like, it's one of those where it's like, okay, like Notre Dame is handily in front going into the half, but it's closer than what it should be. And the third quarter is the one where it's like, all right, like it's time to put the nail in the coffin. Because one thing that we have seen from this defense consistently is the fact that they are good in the third quarter for whatever reason. Now, one light, it's teams continuously go out and make mistakes against Notre Dame's defense in the third quarter. But, I mean, Miami scored 7. I don't think Texas A&M scored in the third. Purdue, I think, had a field goal. I still get that game mixed up because of the weird halftime. Like, because it was like, yeah, that game messes with me.
Purdue did not score again until the fourth quarter.
Okay.
It was 35-23 at halftime. I'm with you, Trev, because of the halftime was a commercial break.
Yeah. I was like,
you kind of think that first drive of like the second drive of the second quarter after the break was the touchdown drive, because they held them to a field goal in the first drive. It was the end of the one drive. And then they went down and scored on the next drive after the kick return. Then halftime, and then Notre Dame started shutting them down. So it felt like it was a second half score, but it was not. A&M only kicked a field goal in the third quarter.
That's right.
The A&M only scored 13 points in the second half. That's the thing about Notre Dame is, the exception of Miami, they've been a much better second half team. I just think part of that, Trev, in my opinion, is because the offense puts teams so far behind, it gets them out of the opponent out of their game plan.
And
I don't know that it's like, because we talked about the A&M game, they only scored 3 points, but that's as much because Marcel Reed can't throw a go ball as it is anything else. Because he had two guys wide open,
100%.
and I mean, for big plays. But I just think that the offense is just able to put pressure on people to where you just can't go out and, if your game plan is like, if Notre Dame's up, let's say 35-23 at halftime against Boise, and then comes out in the second half and gets the ball first and goes down and scores like they did Purdue, Purdue's done. I mean, Boise's done, because everything they want to do game plan wise is out the window. Okay, fine. You want to go on another ball control 7-minute drive when we're up 42-23 in the third quarter? Go for it. Because you're going to lose this football game. They have to get out of what they want to do. The reason A&M was able to make some of those plays in the second half is because what they wanted to do to kind of take the lead is what was working, throwing the ball down the field. Boise doesn't have Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion. I like Latrell Capers and Chris Marshall. They're good football players. They're not They don't have Mario Craver's dynamic athleticism and Casey Concepcion speed.
No.
They just don't. And Notre Dame doesn't have Carson Hobbs and Jalen Stroman in the starting lineup anymore. That matters. Even without the scheme changing at all, that matters.
Yeah.
So I hope your prediction comes true, because if they go out and annihilate Boise State like this, which they're capable of, that's going to tell me something. Because I'm not someone who sits there and is like, Boise State sucks, you should beat them by 40 just by showing up. No. I can tell you guys that Trevor and I have talked a lot about Boise State. His 51-17 prediction is Trevor saying this Notre Dame team is going to arrive this weekend. That's what he's telling you. Because he doesn't have this view of Boise State's this garbage G5 team that Notre Dame's just going to steamroll. So I love that. And I hope that you're right. And I think so too, but just maybe not quite to the degree defensively
totally
that you do. But we're only 3 points off total. I just think that's going to be more of Boise limiting possessions and things like that. So it's capable of being a blowout, but I think it's a big state. If they're able to win the game the way that you predicted, or even if they win the way that I predicted, that's a good step in the right direction. But if they win the way that you predicted, or the way that they're certainly capable of winning it, because like it could even be worse than that. It could look like the Arkansas game if Notre Dame's really cooking on both sides of the ball. Because to your point, Trevor, I think you nailed it. I think they can get scores on defense in this game, because if the defense, if I knew, let's say that I had a source tell me, and they didn't, this is 100% made up. Let's say a source reached out to me and said, hey, man, I've been in practice the last 2 days, and they are heating up. They're going to heat Boise State up this weekend. They're going to go, they're triggering the nickel, the backers. They're going to go after Boise State. I'm going to do this. Me cancel out my score prediction here, and I'm going to. They're not scoring 20 points on this Notre Dame defense if I thought that Chris Ash is going to play the game the way it should be played.
Yeah, and this game also screams tip passes to me.
Yeah,
from the D line
and stuff.
Yeah,
it's a 5'10" quarterback
going up
with a low arm angle,
going up against D linemen like Onye and Rubio and Bryce Young and Boubacar, who just have the longest arms I've ever seen. You know what I mean? So. But hey, at the end of the day, man, we both have Notre Dame covering. Like you said, right now on FanDuel, Notre Dame is 20.5-point favorites. And so we both have them covering. And hopefully, and look, like you said, I'm going to be happy with either one of the score predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it too is another thing that fed into my score prediction. I'm interested to see what Boise State is against not Eastern Washington and Appalachian State. Yeah. And so there's a bunch of moving pieces. So it's like, what takes today? Is Boise State more of who they were against Eastern Washington and Appalachian State? Are they more like they were against South Florida? Is Notre Dame's defense more like what it was against Arkansas or more like what they were against Purdue? Which one takes today?
Boise State is a lot like this whole – people will talk about the South Florida game. Okay, cool. So are we going to assume that Notre Dame is the team that they played against Miami because they haven't looked like that since? No, teams get better. That was a bad game for Boise. Yeah. It wasn't just – if they played again 10 times, South Florida might win 6 or 7 of those games maybe. Maybe. They're not beating them 34-7 again. Like that I'm confident of. Just like if Notre Dame and Miami played again in 2017, they're not losing 41-8 every time. Sometimes games just kind of get away from you. That's how football works. But you also got to say, like, look, they've played one competent offense since then, and that was Air Force. And Air Force went for over 500 yards almost 500 yards. And actually, they were over 500 yards, right? They had like 260 rushing, 240 passing. They were over 500 yards in that game. And so like that's the thing for me is I don't think this offense is great. I think what's the thing for me is I think their defense is capable of playing a lot better than it has. I think their offense is what it is. Like this is who they are on offense. I think if they played South Florida this week instead of Notre Dame, I think Boise State scores 24 to 27 points on South Florida. They might still lose, but I think they scored 24 to 27 points. Just like I think if Notre Dame and Miami played this weekend instead of week 1, I think that game looks a lot different. But that's not life. But you can't just keep assuming that just because you were that way in week 1 or week 3 that you're going to be that way the rest of the year. If Notre Dame would have played in weeks 5 through 12 like they did in weeks 2 and 4, they're a 6-6 football team. Because they lost to Northern Illinois, struggled to beat Miami of Ohio. If they'd have played like that against Navy, they might have lost. If they'd have played like that against USC, they definitely would have lost. They wouldn't have been a playoff team. They wouldn't have beat Georgia. They wouldn't have beat Indiana. They wouldn't have beat Penn State. Teams evolve. Some teams get worse. Some teams get better. Very few teams stay the same. I think Boise's getting better each week. But to your point, Trev, they've benefited from playing inferior competition. That's going to change a lot this weekend. And that's why I think the fast start's so important on both sides of the ball. If Notre Dame wins the first quarter convincingly, Boise will get smoked just because they don't have the horses they had back in the day under Chris Peterson when they were really rolling. They just don't. They don't have they don't have a Kellen Moore at quarterback. They don't even have a Jared Zabrowski at quarterback. They don't have Maddox Madsen is a very mediocre quarterback. And it hurts their ability to be more productive on offense. It does. And so like that's kind of my point, Trev, is they're not that team against South Florida that they were. But the gap between them and Notre Dame, if Notre Dame plays like the team that we've seen recently and not the team against Miami, then this still shouldn't be a competitive football game. Because I would say that the improvement from Boise State from week 1 to now isn't even close to the kind of improvement we've seen from Notre Dame from week 1 to week now, offensively.
Yeah.
Defensively, we'll see. But Miami might still score 20-some points right now against Notre Dame. Maybe more, because now Miami'd have some film on Notre Dame to even see some things that they missed. The problem is they're not keeping this Notre Dame offense to 24 points if they played again.
No,
not happening. Not happening.
Brian, let's talk game wreckers. And we break this down offense and defense. I'll get us kicked off again here. I have a couple on offense. Real quick, before we dive into who, I kind of had a rough time picking game wreckers this week.
Mm-hmm.
Because
you're trying to think outside the box and not pick the same guys every time, or what?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to just, all right, game record number 1, CJ Carr. Game record number 2, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And game record number 3, Malachi Fields. Off to you, Brian, because it's just like that's
But
kind
if that's how you see it, that's okay. And I would say this, Trev, is if the game goes how you think it's going to go, I have a hard time having it not being at least 2 of those 3 guys.
Oh, agreed. I didn't go with any of the running backs because I felt like that was a given. That's just me. No issue if anybody else does, but we're talking about a duo that has 16 touchdowns in 3 games. I don't know how much more I could talk about them.
Yeah.
Like,
real bold take there, Trev.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are going to score again? Oh, okay. Way to go, Trev. Glad I pay you for them big bucks for that analysis.
The odds for Jeremiah Love to score a touchdown is just a touchdown is minus 500. Basically, that means if you bet $10, you'd win $2. Like, yeah. Death taxes Jeremiah Love is going to score a touchdown. It's one of those things.
I mean, I'm trying to think. He's only what? I know he didn't score against Miami.
No,
nope. Correct. So give me 1 second. I'm going to look this up real quick because this is actually quite an incredible statistic. But if you look at Jeremiah Love, he has scored in all but 2 games, 3 games in the last year. He didn't score against Georgia. It was the first time all year he didn't score. He didn't score against Ohio State, and he didn't score against Miami. He scored in every other game he's played in since then. Actually, you go back to the Oregon State game in 2023, he scored. So Notre Dame has played 21 games in the last since Audric Estime left. Jeremiah Love has scored in 18 of 21 games. And in 7 of those games, he scored multiple times. So there is over twice as good of a chance that he scores multiple touchdowns than he scores no touchdowns. Just looking at the odds. So yeah, that's smart. That's why FanDuel's not going out of business and running out of money, because they're not making stupid odds. Yeah.
With that being said, some of my game wreckers, one of them is one that I do just think is going to have a dominant performance. The other one is, it's just kind of more, the more I say that he's going to have a breakout game, the second that he does it, I'm going to sit in the postgame shows like, I said earlier in the week, Jaden Greathouse was going to. So
yeah, you said it the week before that, week before that too, man. I'm with you on that. That was going to be one of mine, so I'm with you on that.
But the first one I'll talk about is Eli Raridan. Shocker to people who first started listening, but in all seriousness, he provides a lot of mismatch nightmares for opposing defenses. There's not a linebacker that you can put on him, especially not on Boise State's roster. Ty Benefield, one of their safeties, he's 6'2". He's one of their bigger defensive players. He's just not good in coverage. It's not the strength of his game. He flies downhill. He blows up plays around the line of scrimmage. Your safety is your tackle for loss leader on your defense right now. He is. And you can't put the other safety on him because I think the other starting safety is 5'11". Eli Raridan, 6'7". He is somebody that Notre Dame is going to have to start attacking the middle of the field. We've talked throughout this week of, hey, it's no longer a mystery what Notre Dame does to be effective on offense. So part of what I hope to see, not necessarily a key to victory, but part of what I hope to see this week is Notre Dame more willing to attack the field, the middle of the field. How do you do that? Well, it's with the 2 guys that I projected to be my game wreckers for this week. We haven't seen Eli Raridan do a whole lot in the seam. We haven't seen Eli Raridan do a whole lot across the middle of the field. We haven't seen that from Jaden Greathouse either. So I'm kind of pairing those 2 together, but those are my 2. Eli Raridan, because I do actually believe that this will be the game. I guess the best way to put it is I would be surprised if Eli Raridan didn't have a big game this weekend. Because of how this season has gone, I wouldn't be surprised if Jaden Greathouse didn't. Not saying that I agree with it, but I expected to see it against Purdue. We saw it a little bit against Arkansas, but if it doesn't happen against Boise State, I'm not going to be like, oh my goodness, I'm baffled. But if Eli Raridan doesn't, I will be a little shocked because of the matchup night.
The matchup,
so
yeah.
Those are my 2 on offense.
I'm not going with Jaden Greathouse just because I don't think they care to make him a bigger part of the offense. I hope I'm wrong on that. And I hope that we look back and be like, hey, this Jaden finally had to break out. Him and CJ are finally connecting. I mean, look, I don't know what else CJ Carr needs to do. Like, anytime you give the ball even remotely with him a chance to catch it, he's going to go out and make the catch. So maybe you might want to do that more often. I'm kind of going with what I am going running backs number one, just because that's the best part of your team. And when if you're gonna blow a team out the way that we're talking about blowing them out, then the running backs be a part of it, which you have taken to such an extreme that you're not even going to mention them because it should just be assumed. And I totally get that. And I'm with you on that. But I do think that they need to make sure that they're locked in and don't turn the ball over and don't drop passes. Like, you've got to make sure you're locked in. Don't start reading your own press clippings and think, hey, we're big time and Boise's going to roll over and die just because we stepped on the field. Keep it going. Stay hungry. Be patient. Continue improving and evolving as a running back, especially Jeremiah Love, because let's be real. Jeremiah Love's had one good rushing game so far this year. That's it. And that was against Purdue. I mean, he didn't run the ball poorly against Arkansas. There just weren't a lot of holes there when he was in the game. He didn't run the ball great against Texas A&M. We broke that down. It was partly the line, partly him, and then he didn't do much of anything against Miami. So I still think he has a lot of improvement and a lot of something to show as a runner in this game. And so I would like to see that. And then Jadarian Price, it's like, dude, just everything you did the first 4 games, except for the one fumble, keep doing that. Just keep doing what you're doing. But I also think it's pretty obvious that Mike Denbrock is going into this game like he has the last few, saying, I got to find ways to get Jeremiah and Jadarian to football in different ways, especially Jeremiah. And that's where I think the lack of, like, you and I talked about it before the show, I don't think much of Boise State's secondary. They have had way better secondaries in the past. So they've had way better athletes in the secondary. I think they're smart football players. I think they're well-coached football players. I think their secondary is full of tough kids. I don't think they're very athletic. And I think they can be beat by a good pass offense. And Notre Dame has recently they're not even a good pass offense. The last 3 games, they've pretty much been an elite pass offense, the last 3 games. And I think I saw CJ. I had CJ Carr's 3rd in college football in quarterback rating against Power 5 teams. And he's 5th in college football, I think, 5th or 6th in college football in yards per attempt against Power 5 teams. So, and Boise doesn't have the athletes that Arkansas and Purdue have. What they do have, however, is they're more disciplined, they're more sound than those 2 teams. But if the way that Mike Denbrock has called the last 3 games, he's going to look and say, I need to figure out how to get number 4 matched up against one of those guys. If there's a way that you can game plan to get say it again, say his
Marco name. Notarini.
If there's ways you can get Marco matched up against Jeremiah Love in space, how do you not do it? And I don't know that the screen game is the only way to do that, because he's a pretty smart kid. And I worry about him reading it and blowing it up before it can get going. But if you can get him in space in some angle routes, some, just quick outs, option routes against him, wheels, if there's ways that you can get Jeremiah Love matched up against a safety or a linebacker for Boise State, you're going to do it. And Mike Denbrock has proven the last 3 games that he wants to figure out ways to do that. And so I think it won't just be the running game. And that's what makes this running back room so hard to stop. I mean, Arkansas kept Jeremiah Love in check as a runner. Really? I mean, he did. He had, he had averaged 4.1 yards per carry.
Yeah.
He finished the game with, I think, 55 rushing yards, I believe. 57 rushing yards? Let me pull up Jeremiah's stats. 57 rushing yards on 14 carries, 4.1 yards per carry. If you'd have told Arkansas before the game, hey guys, you're going to hold Jeremiah Love to 57 rushing yards on 14 carries. And yeah, Jadarian Price is going to get you a little bit. He's going to bite you a little bit, but he's only going to rush for 86 yards on 13 carries. So when you play Notre Dame's big-time running backs, you're only going to give up, 143 yards rushing on 27 carries. They're going to be like, all right, like we did okay. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I forgot to tell you something. I left something really important out. And that is that they're also going to combine for 105 pass receiving yards. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that. They're like, oh, man. That's what makes this unit so dangerous. Is you can shut them down in the pass game, the run game, but you can't shut them down in everything. And so that's
keep
why
them out of the end zone.
Exactly.
I mean,
who has kept them out of the end zone? Miami, Georgia, and Ohio State. And in 2 of those 3 games, he didn't barely touch the ball.
Yeah.
Because he was injured. He barely touched the ball. He had, 4 carries against Ohio State last year?
Yeah, he had 4 carries for 3 yards.
Yeah, and he had 6 carries against Georgia. He was injured, and he didn't touch the ball much. So the best chance you have of keeping Jeremiah Love out of the end zone is that the Notre Dame coaches or quarterback decide not to hand him the football. That's your best shot of keeping him out of the end zone.
Yep. And technically, it wasn't a touchdown, but he did get into the end zone on a 2-point conversion against Ohio State as well. So
That's true.
He still was able to cross the white chalk, but
that's right.
I'm just messing.
He's my number one. He's my number one guy.
Well, I get that.
Who
else do you have on? Oh, I just had Greathouse and Raritan on offense.
I had Raritan. I had CJ Carr as one of mine also. Look, and the reason I have CJ this week, it's different than just, hey, keep doing what you're doing. It's, I think Boise's going to throw stuff at you that you haven't seen a whole lot of yet. Miami didn't blitz Notre Dame a lot. They didn't need to. I mean, that's what made it harder for the offenses, because they could drop 7 and still get to the – heck, the last drive of the game, they dropped 8 and still got to the quarterback. And so you haven't really faced a heavy pressure package yet, and I think Boise's going to do that. So I think CJ's got to be a game record, because if you can accurately get the ball out to the right receivers against the pressure, they're going to rip Boise apart, because that means if you're bringing 6, maybe even 7, if CJ can get the ball out accurately, what happens then is now all of a sudden you're in space against that secondary of those linebackers. That's not going to go well. My concern is that CJ turns the ball over in those situations, does what he's done every other game, which is make a poor decision on how to throw the ball away, which then leads to, minus 14s or whatever, like we saw last week on an intentional grounding. Like, you can't have that. And so he's got to be a game record in this game. He's got to keep doing what you're doing, limit the mistakes. Don't turn the ball over. Boise's going to do everything in their power to try to force you into mental mistakes, because they know physically they can't beat this team and they can't beat CJ. So mentally, he's going to have to be sharp and be a game wrecker. And sometimes being a game wrecker against what I think he's going to see is kind of like what we saw against Arkansas. That guy's coming in your face. Drop that arm angle down, hit him 5 yards down the field, then let him go do the work. That's what you got to do. But it gets to the point where it's like, what makes it – here's the rub for Boise, though, Trev. Okay, you bring 6, and Notre Dame just does an empty release where they just run a swing route to Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price, and now it's 5-on-5, and you're done. Like that's what makes this offense so unique. Is all the thing Notre Dame has the weapons. Okay, sure, you brought a heavy overload blitz, but Notre Dame happened to be running a tunnel screen to Malachi, Faison, or Greathouse at that particular time, and now it's out the gate. That's what makes it so hard to defend this offense. So I think CJ's got to be one. And then my final one is Malachi Fields, just because I look at Boise, Trevor, and their corners can't run with him, and him and CJ are starting to get more and more of a connection, as we've seen each week. Denbrock starting to do a few more things to try to get him the football and get him in situations where, hey, look, we're obviously making it a focal point to get him the football. And so with that being said, I think that puts him in a great position to go out there and make some big plays. And what I like about what they're doing with Malachi is he doesn't have to catch the ball 8-9 times to have an impact in the game. He can do that in 3 catches. I mean, what did he have against Purdue? 2, and completely changed the game. 66-yard touchdown and a 3rd and 10 conversion. I mean, he can change the game in 2-3 touches. And I think he'll continue that in this game. I think he's a guy that's going to go out there and have a big day, because I think that Boise's going to say, hey, we got a 6'2" corner and a 6-foot corner. We can match up size-wise. No, you can't. No, you can't. You can't. So I think that he's going to be another guy that has a big day. Let's go defense, Trev. Who's your first game wrecker on defense?
Like I do every week, I'm going to work front to back, and the first one I'm going with is Bryce Young. I think that, this is going to be the freakiest athlete that this Boise State offensive line is going to face in quite a while. And that's not a knock on Boise State's level of competition, because they've faced really good athletes before in the past. I mean, like we talked about, they faced Abdul Carter last year. They faced the kid from Oregon, but they have yet to go up against a 6'7", 273-pound defensive end. But the other reason why I have him on there, and honestly the bigger reason, is Boubacar, in my opinion, desperately needs somebody else to step up opposite of him at the edge. Because he's been spectacular this season in both phases, against the run and as a pass rusher. But like we saw in 2022 with Isaiah Foskey, teams, if you only have a edge rusher, they can do things to scheme you out.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that against Clemson, I think actually not Clemson. We saw that against, because they beat Clemson in 22. The game is escaping me, but there was one game where they game plan and completely took Isaiah Foskey out of the game.
Yes, it was second half of the. I'm trying to. Oh goodness, yeah, I know you're talking about. I'm going to go look at the schedule. There was a game in 2022 where the opponent absolutely took Isaiah Foskey out of the game, just double teamed him, and was it? Yeah, I'll look it up, Trev, because as I go through the game, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that was the game.
Okay,
but yeah, I think it was Navy. No, it wasn't Navy. Was it Stanford?
I was just about to say it might have been, because I remember them being at home.
I think it might have been Stanford.
And there was a game that Isaiah Foskey was just completely taken in both phases, against the run and the pass.
Yeah.
And they had other ends on that team. Like Nana Osafo-Mensah he was a quality football player. He made some big impactful plays in some key moments, but he wasn't on the same level playing field. This is the first time in quite some time Notre Dame has had two edge rushers that have the potential to be on the same playing field to the degree of skill sets. I think this is going to be a game where Bryce Young is absolutely going to be able to take advantage of that and show that, hey, I can be the perfect complement to Boubacar on the other side. And we've seen flashes of it. It's not like I'm asking him to be this guy that he just hasn't been all season. And against a quality offensive line, like now it's time, but it's time to put it all together. And Bryce Young is my first game record.
I'm going up front too, Trev. I'm going to go Gabriel Rubio. I think this is a game where he's going. This is a Gabriel Rubio game, in my opinion. It needs to be anyway. Big interior, tough kids. They're going to try to run downhill on Notre Dame. They're going to try to run their stretch plays. They're going to try to run their gap scheme plays. This is a game where if Gabriel Rubio has a big game, one of our keys to victory was slow down the run game, make them beat you. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on how to slow down the run game. We just talked about why you need to slow down the run game. But one of the big things to do is Gabriel's got to have a big game. Somebody in the chat said Jared Dawson too. Agree. I think all the D tackles have to have a big game, but I think Gabriel is uniquely built to thrive in a game like this.
Yeah.
And he's just getting better. I mean, he's been kind of good all year, but he's just gotten better each week. He's been a force against the run for the most part the last 2 weeks, and I think he's some things he can still do better. There was one play last week where he got off a block and just rocked the running back. And you're like, okay, that's what I want to see more of him. But I think this is a game where if they're going to shut down the run game, I have a hard time seeing that happening without Gabriel Rubio having a big day. I do. I think he's got to have a big day for Notre Dame to win this football game.
Agreed. My next game record, and this one is partially barring him being allowed to play faster and free into the football. And I'm hoping that they do based on Boise State's style of play. But my next game record is Drake Bowen. I think because of the scheme of the defense, he has been wrongly criticized this year. And of course, the people in the I hate Drake Bowen camp, which is a weird camp to be in anyways, but have gotten extremely, extremely loud this year because of the defensive philosophy and them asking the linebackers to hang back and not attack downhill and play violent and play to the football. Part of him being my game wrecker is Chris Ash turning the linebackers loose, but I think this is the perfect game and perfect opportunity to do it because this isn't a team that can really hurt you over top. But I think that Drake Bowen has a game where we sit down in the post-game show, or you guys sit down in the post-game show and you say, okay, that's the 34 that we saw last year. So
they finally allowed him to be that guy.
Yes. And I have Drake as that because shutting down the run is going to be an important aspect of this game. And I think that trio of running backs that Boise State have, they're going to be getting flashback nightmares in number 34 coming and closing on the football quick on their flight back to Boise, Idaho. So I have Drake Bone as my second one, Brian. What about you?
Unfortunately, Trev, I don't have a linebacker on my list this week just because
I get it.
They're not and until Chris Ash completely changes his defense, he's not allowing the linebackers to be that kind of impact player.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowing your linebackers to be difference makers. They make a play here, they make a play there in coverage, but you've done more to give Kingston Viliama-Asa and Drake Bowen chances to make plays in coverage than you've given them chances to make plays against the run or against the rushing the quarterback, which I think is just like a coaching malpractice, in my opinion. That's just you saying we're going to run this scheme independent of what I have as players. That's what that is. So until Chris Ash shows me that, hey, I know how to coach a college defense again, I know it's been a while, but I figured it out. Until he shows me that, I just can't in good faith have a linebacker on there.
I get it.
But I'm going to go with some DBs because I do think Mike Mickens has them boys playing a little bit more aggressively. And a guy that I have a feeling is going to have a big day. Now, I don't know where he's going to play, but I just feel like this is going to be a game where Christian Gray makes a couple huge plays in this game. So I have Christian Gray as one of my game wreckers in this game. And now if he's into the boundary, he's going to get some unique chances. That's going to be a tough matchup for him, especially when he's matched up against Chris Marshall in the boundary because that's a big 6'4 plus kid that can run. But if he's to the field, and this is where I don't know where they're going to use him because Leonard Moore was upgraded from questionable to probable today. But what are they going to do with Leonard Moore? Are they going to start him and say, okay, let's get him some work? Or are they going to not start him and maybe work him in? Or are they going to say, okay, he's good to go if we need him, but if we can get through this game without him, we're going to be okay because we want to get him healthy for NC State and USC and then moving forward, which is not a bad idea. But if Christian Gray's to the field, I even more so feel good about this because this is the kind of game where Maddox Madsen throws a quick throw and he doesn't see Christian Gray stepping in front of it. And so I think Christian Gray is going to make a couple big plays in this game that are going to really shut some things down and give Notre Dame chances to really put this one away early.
Love that. Love that pick. My last one's also in the secondary, and I'm actually going to go as far as call my shot here. I think Tate Johnson gets a pick six in this game. I do. Look, man, he got his hand on the football a couple of times against Arkansas, so he has a little bit of a taste for it. With how much Boise State likes to throw underneath, I think that's begging for Tate Johnson to love that. Love that. I think that's begging for Tate Johnson to just slide underneath one of those crossing routes and then take it to the house. Plus, I would love to see what he can do with the ball in his hands, considering he's also being recruited to be a wide receiver.
He was pretty good at that in high school.
Yeah.
They moved him quarterback his senior year, and they just snap him the ball and let him go. Yeah.
I mean, but in all seriousness, I think Tate Johnson is due for a really big game. I love the dynamic between him and Adon Schuler. We said it last week that Tate Johnson insertion into the starting lineup was going to free up Adon Schuler to play like how he did in 2024. We saw that come to fruition. I think that Tate Johnson has a big week. I think he sneaks underneath route and takes one back to the house because I think he got his hands on a couple of them last week and he's itching to get one. So I got Tate as my last one.
That was mine. I'm with you on that. I just look. Here's part of the reason I think Notre Dame is better against Miami and A&M now than they were then. Even if Chris Ash calls the exact same plays, having Devontae Smith and Dallas Golden at nickel instead of Carson Hobbs, and having more of a Don in Tay Johnson and less of Jalen Stroman just makes this a better secondary just by itself. They looked way better in the secondary last week with Devontae, Dallas, and Tay, and a more experienced Mark Zachary than they did at any point in time this year with Leonard Moore on the field. Now, none of them looked as good as Leonard Moore. I'm saying the secondary looked better. That's not to say they looked better because there was no Leonard Moore. My point is, even without your star, your secondary looked way better because of all those other players. Now, as the season wears on, and you can then insert your star boundary corner, that's where the secondary starts looking like we thought it was going to look. Even with the scheme issues that are going to continue to like kind of rear their ugly head. Because the reality is, Trevor, even if the scheme sucks, when they get this defense fully healthy, you're still going to have those guys make some plays. Even with a junk scheme, they're still going to make some plays. And that's what kind of has me a little fired up about what this secondary can be. And then if they get healthy and Chris Ash makes the necessary changes and Marcus Freeman demands he makes the necessary changes, that's when this defense starts to look like that top 25 defense that we're hoping it can be. Like you said, I'm not ever going to talk about that's how they're going to look like the top 5 defense they should have been. I'm past that. It's possible, but I just don't have any faith that it's going to get done. Just give me a top 25 defense. If you can give me a top 25 defense, Notre Dame if you tell me the rest of the year Notre Dame's going to play like a top 25 defense from now to the end of the regular season, I'll be like, all right, cool. Now I'm just curious what seed they're going to be, because they're not going to lose, and I don't know that they're going to have a close game. Not with this offense. Not with this offense. So the secondary is where a lot of my excitement comes from on that.
I'm with you. Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 3 of the show today. But don't go anywhere. We're going to tie this all up, talk some big picture college football games. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.